Okay, let's start with, I think, this one. I hope this works.
We can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
No.
Can you hear it now?
No.
Anybody know how I make this sound? I don't know how to get the sound from there to you.
If you click out of the video, is your actual computer's volume all the way up?
All the way. It's up at 100. Let me try this. Can you hear it now?
No.
No.
What's the video called? Maybe we can just all go and watch it real quick and come back.
Okay, if you hold on. Okay, it's in announcements. I'm just looking for one other thing now. Okay, how do I get out of here? Okay, if you go to, this is going to kick me out of the, when I open Canvas, it's going to kick me out real quick of the meeting again, and I'll get back in.
Okay, I just Googled it, and if you go to the bottom of your Teams thing, there should be a share button, and then if you click desktop, it should give you that option.
I thought I did.
That's what Google says to do.
Okay.
Whoops, I'm going to be sharing my screen.
I'll do that. Hold on.
It's Windows and desktops. I'm going to go ahead and click on the desktop in a sec, but before I
There should be like a square that says include system audio.
Should be a square that says what?
Include system audio. So once you hit share, it should pop up at like the bottom of your Teams, and it should give you a bunch of squares, and at the top of that bar, it should say that.
Okay.
But it says it only works if you have it downloaded, like the actual app, if not if you're like on the Windows version.
It only works if what?
If you have the actual like app on your computer.
Okay, that little bar came up and I already am sharing. Is it the little square that you push when you push share?
Yes. And then on there at the top where above where it says desktop, it should say include system audio.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then once you check mark that, it should work, it says.
That
You might have to share your screen again for it to do it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to act like these two fingers are glued together.
Now we can hear it now.
Yep, we hear it.
Come apart. They're glued.
Hey,
And they're,
you.
do you see how they don't move?
Thanks,
I'm just
Mariah.
wrist
I'll-
to do the up and down motion.
You're
That's what I need you to
You guys are awesome. All right. Now, first of all, this is, you're going to need to know how to grasp. You know what? I need to show you that one first, actually. Let me do this one. Okay, does everybody have like a pen or a pencil in front of them?
Yeah.
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 Make sure that, okay, make sure that you have that, because the very first thing about instrumentation, of course, is going to be how you hold it. And this, you hold it on a modified pin grasp. So as you're writing, you just kind of modify that same kind of grasp that you would write with, but we're going to modify the third finger, or the second actual finger. And so I want you to watch this, and this can be helpful for you to be practicing with. It takes a minute to practice. It's like patting your head and rubbing your tummy. So everybody can do that, really, but a lot of people have to really practice at it. And with our instrumentation, we are going to be going up and, up and down like this. Let me see, up and down like this. But at the same time, we're going to be rolling the pencil as we're going up and down. So that's what you've got to kind of practice and get down a little bit before, because that's the movement that we do for every single instrument, no matter what it is, and also the Explorer. So here you go. Can you see that?
So the second thing that we're going to work on is
Yes.
establishing the correct finger placement to create that modified pen grasp. I'm going to start with a pencil, and then we'll move to the instrument just so that you can see. When you pick up your pencil, this is the pen grasp. It's not the modified pen grasp, this is the pen grasp. And when I pick it up, you can see that my fingers, my thumb and my index finger, are slightly apart, and my middle finger is underneath that pencil. So this is your pen grasp, okay? Now I'm going to transfer that over into my instrument. So when I pick up an instrument, I'm going to pick it up that same way. My index finger and my thumb have got to be separated. Too often, a common mistake is students get their fingers real close together like this, which you don't have the ability to be able to roll that instrument. So first you have to have your thumb and your index finger apart, and a modified pen grasp. Now the difference is you're going to take your middle finger from the bottom and you're going to move it so that the pad, instead of the side, the pad of that middle finger is on the shank of the instrument. So remember, we said the shank was the part of the instrument that ran from the handle to that working end. So your modified pen, you're going to have your fingers, your thumb and your index finger are going to be across from each other with a slight space. Your middle finger is going to move up and you're going to rest it on the shank of that instrument, and you're going to find that the handle is resting on the knuckle, not back in the V, but up on this knuckle. Okay? To be able to practice this, you don't need to have your instrument. You can be working with your pencils to work on this. You can pick it up, you can check to see that your index finger and your thumb are there, and just move that up. A good exercise is just being able to get yourself to roll those fingers and to get that pencil to come up. You can do it with your pens, you can do it with your pencil, but just to get in the habit of rolling that up so that it's not resting back here in the natural position that we write in. We want to have, when we are doing instrumentation, we want to have that handle up. So this is your modified pen. So let's go back to your instrument. I'm going to pick that up. I'm going to place my fingers here. My thumb and my forefinger or index finger are across from each other. My middle finger is up on that shank. So this is my modified pen. Now that you have it, you have to be able to also move it. Just to be able to establish the finger grip is not going to be enough. You're going to have to be able to roll that instrument. That's how we're moving. So a good exercise for you to work on is taking that pen grasp in your modified pen and rolling the instrument forwards and backwards, forwards and backwards, just to get in the habit of moving. A lot of times I will actually see students taking their instrument and moving it up there. You've got to be able to use your finger strength to get it up there and roll forwards and backwards to adapt that instrument. Okay? Now we're going to take this, I'm going to let you.
Sorry. Okay.
Welcome to the University of Michigan.
Too bad. Okay. So were you guys able to do that very well?
Yeah.
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 Yes.
Okay. So on your, what instrument do you have? Like, take your Explorer. Okay. So your Explorer has a lot of bends in it. And so the shank is like the very first bit that is coming out. I can't even see that. It's the very first bit that's coming out to like that first. It's all a shank, but the terminal shank is going to be the very last bend, which would be right here with the very last bend, and then onto the curve. Okay, so when we talk about terminal shank, that's the part that we mean, from there to there. And that's when we talk about the functional shank, that's the rest of it. And that you want to hold it down low, and you want to be able to put the pad of your middle finger on that top of that shank. Okay, so I want you to hold these up in front of you and hold the instrument. Look at that terminal shank, that very end one to the point, and make that go perpendicular to the floor. Okay.
Which
So
tool did you want us?
what?
Which one did you want us to use?
The Explorer. Everybody got it? So you want to make that terminal shank perpendicular to the floor, and the handle's going off to the side. You can see it going off. It's not straight up and down. What is straight up and down is that last bend to the point. That's the terminal shank, and that they have one on every instrument. I don't care, sickles, curettes, round-toed, pointed. Okay, so they're going to have this terminal shank, and this is what you have to, when you put it on your typodont, when you put it on a tooth, you place it on there with that terminal shank parallel to the long axis of the tooth. So it's not
Professor Ramos, there's a lot of people saying they can't see you.
they can't see. Oh, well, I have my camera on.
They just have to click on her initials, guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Are we good? I hope.
It doesn't work when I click on her initials.
Yeah, it still shows the screen, but
Yeah, same thing. It just shows the screen.
That is so weird. Can everybody else see me? I mean, most people?
Oh, I see you now.
Okay.
Yeah, now I can see you.
Okay. So you'll notice that what I was saying was that the handle is not straight up and down like that. When you have this very bottom terminal shank perpendicular to the floor, like just like this, then it's pointing this way. The rest of your handle is either going to point that way or that way. Because if you turn it over and do the other side, it's going to be pointing the other way and make that perpendicular to the floor. Or if this is a tooth, my thumbnail, it would be parallel to the long axis of the tooth, this being the long axis of the tooth. So with that, we'll go into a few others. Let me get rid of this. I think these might help. One of these gals is a little goofy, but she has some good information, so just bear with.
From the geniuses that brought you the at-home teeth aligner kit, Happy Mouth Now, comes Happy Eyes Now.
You hold all instruments while providing treatment with a modified pen grasp to increase control and reduce mucoskeletal issues. It is called a modified pen grasp because it's similar to holding a pen while writing with a few modifications. The finger pads of the thumb and index finger rest opposite of each other at or near the junction of the handle and the shank. The fingertips shouldn't be touching. The joint should also be relaxed and shouldn't be hyperextended. The handle will rest between the second and third knuckle here. The handle shouldn't go beyond this range. The side of the middle finger pad will rest slightly on the instrument shank. The fingertip of the ring finger is your fulcrum finger. It will rest on the teeth for support of the hand, wrist, and instrument. The middle finger and ring finger can never be separated like this. They must always remain together for support. Although they can't be separated, the middle finger can move up and down along the side of the ring finger. To avoid the separation while working intraorally, remember that the fulcrum finger must move position when you move to a new treatment area. For example, while treating the maxillary facial anterior away surfaces, as you move from treating number 8 to number 9, if you don't move the fulcrum finger, they will become separated, which will cause strain on the wrist and hand and make scaling more difficult. The little finger has no function and is to be held in a relaxed position, not flexed.
Geez, I can't get out of here fast enough. Okay, and there's this one.
We're going to talk about instrument grasp today, and we have Kristen Muhlstein, our star.
What we call the working end would be the very tip that you're going to be adapting to the tooth. And so the type of grasp that we will use is the modified pen grasp. The function of each of the fingers in the grasp, your thumb and index finger are what you use for control to move the instrument around, and then the middle finger you're going to place on the shank, and that's to help you with the tactile sensitivity. And then your ring finger is what you use as your fulcrum for support. And so, yeah, this is how you.
Can I just point out here, I like that she's got her thumb and her forefinger directly opposite each other. So a lot of times you'll see maybe something like this, there's not as much control in the grasp, unless you're in the split V of the hand grasp, but she'll go over that in a minute. So this is how it should look.
Yeah.
I also like, look at that thumb, beauty moss. What don't I like? Da-da-da. Okay. This is nice.
Okay. So yeah, you want to keep your thumb up.
So what's the next thing?
Thumb opposite. And
Oh, look how nice her grasp is right now. It's not a death grip. So it should look like this, very light-handed, where I could almost take the instrument out of her hand if I had to. Show me what a death grip looks like. Look at that. Yeah, you're not going to feel anything if your grasp is that tight.
And it hurts.
Yeah, and it hurts.
And then with your middle finger, you want it on the shank and use the pad of your finger for the rest.
Yeah, and can I just show you? Sometimes I see people do this. That's not going to do anything for you. It's awkward, you don't have control, and you're not getting any tactile sense with that.
Okay, then what I want you guys to know that they're not really going over at this point is that another one will. I don't know how you can see my. Okay, so you've got this in your hand and it's relaxed and it's super light, and you want it in your hand, I mean, firm enough that it's not gonna fall out, but light enough that I could go behind you and just pull it out. You just don't want it even medium firm or that death grip. And usually it takes a while to get most students not to hold it like so tight. And when you'll know that you are, because your fingers will hurt. After you go around a tooth or two and you go, wow, my fingers are cramping, it means you're holding it too tight. So you need to hold it loose. And the reason is even your other instruments are held really loose until you, like that you go subgingival with, until you get underneath a piece of calculus, and then you lock on underneath, then you hold it tight and pull it off. But if you hold it tight going in and out and in and out the whole time, your fingers are just, I mean, you'll know. And it can ruin many a career because you just can't take the pressure on your joints. So what they're saying with this thumb is try not to hold it like this. Some people have a really hard time trying to pull their thumb out, but this after a long time, even holding it tight, I mean loose, will hyperextend that thumb if you go like this a lot, and you'll be feeling it up in here. Okay, so you'll feel it all in through here, and you're gonna go, okay, I need that thumb out a little bit. It doesn't have to be like that, but it just has to not be so rigidly concave or straight. You just have got to bend that a little bit, and it's gonna give you, and that'll take a little bit to remember where all your fingers go and what you're doing. So the whole point or the whole movement of all of the instruments for dental hygiene is that you use your hand as one. You're not using your fingers to go up and down. Everyone wants to do that just as a natural thing. I mean, you just get on a tooth and you want to start using your fingers and moving them up and down. This will also eventually create a carpal tunnel situation and cramping and whatnot. You can't do it like that. So for the long term, we use this as if it's one, nothing bends. Like if we go down, we move the whole thing down. If we come up, we move the whole thing up. The only movement would be in twirling it back and forth. But if we twirl it back and forth, we're going down as a movement in your whole hand. Okay, so you can twirl back and forth that way. And you can get like a 360, you won't ever need that, but you can get certainly a 180 where you are going from one side and turning it to the other side to go like this and turning it this way to go another way. Okay, so as you're doing this, now I noticed on some of these videos that when they use the probe, they do put their fingers, they're like, you can use your fingers up and down when you use the probe. But even the gal on the video states that when that she really doesn't do it that way, that you can. But like if you just get used to doing every single instrument the same way and not use your fingers, it will be much better for you and for the scaling and for control and for strength. It's much easier to latch on to a piece of calculus underneath a tooth, and once you latch on underneath and use your whole arm and wrist for strength to pull that off than it is to use your fingers. You're going to come across some really tenacious, like cement-like calculus, and we need to avoid doing this. So you may do that for a while. Just every time you notice yourself doing that, you just got to stop and use your whole wrist. If you do, like when I go down, like when I move my hand forward like this and my arm and pivot it, I'm pivoting on this fulcrum ring finger, and like I'll be on the tooth next to it, and I go there, and then I put this on here and I go down and up, down and up. And when I make the up movement, I'm pushing down on this. And so you can see, if you can feel that and push down on the fulcrum finger a little bit, that's where you're going to get your strength. But I still am not using my fingers like that. Does that make sense? Or anybody it doesn't make sense to? Or is confused?
It makes sense. I feel like just doing it is going to help.
Yeah, you've just got to do it and do it and do it. And there's going to be a point where long before you graduate, I mean, there's going to be a point in doing this, especially after you have some patients next term. And it will be even by the end of this term. God willing, we can keep practicing either this way or in clinic. It's going to just become, you don't think about it when you pick up a pen or a pencil to write. I mean, you're not thinking about where are my fingers. You know, it's automatic pilot. And that's what this is going to be. But some people take to it like duck to water, and some people need to, they learn just as well with the same end result, but it takes a little while to be able to coordinate the fingers, like patting your head and rubbing your tummy type of thing.
I have a question though, because I feel like I always use my fulcrum outside of the mouth, and so it almost feels awkward being on a tooth. Do you have any suggestion on how to make it not feel weird being on a tooth?
Well, you can now fulcrum outside of the mouth. So that means that, I don't know if you can see this, but if I were the patient and my hand was the clinician, they had this instrument, they would be coming like this, and maybe they fulcrum like this and hold like they're holding down there. They make their pivot here or here rather than on a tooth. And that's okay. But in the posteriors, it's almost a must. in the anteriors, you get more strength a lot of times by being on a tooth, honestly, when you, and that's something that you will just, you're going to see as you do it. Now, you guys, when you're practicing, if we get to practice on each other, it's almost like, well, no, it's not. I was going to say almost like doing a typodont, but it's not, because these typodonts have deeper pockets and are rubbery. But you guys mostly probably are not going to have very deep pockets. You're not going to have a lot of calculus. I hope some of you do have a little bit of calculus, because the people that are working on you, I mean, it's easier to practice when you're actually pulling that off or feeling it with an explorer than to have somebody with a really clean mouth, because all you're doing is going over the surface. You're getting the motion, and that's great practice, and turning it, learning to roll it, so that the point does not poke their tissue, which is the whole point that we roll it. Now on these instruments, and even on our other instruments, even though it has quite a little curve down there at the working end, and it's a little wide or a little long, what we do is we're really only adapting the last couple millimeters. I mean, we pretend like the rest of it isn't even there. You're looking at the last couple millimeters, and you'll see some, I think, in some of these, a reason why we do that. There's no way you can go around a whole tooth, like if my thumb was the tooth, there's no way that you can go around the whole tooth keeping that whole side on the tooth. When you get into the interproximal, it's too long, and as you start to turn in, that point's going to be right in their papilla, because it's too much to turn. So we keep the last couple millimeters on the tooth, and if the rest of it is on, that's fine. If it's not, that's fine. So as you curve, though, interproximal, you for sure only have the last couple millimeters in, and then you're on their tooth and not in their gum. So the last couple millimeters need to always be in contact with the tooth. If you make sure that the side of that point is always touching enamel or root, it's not going to be in their tissue. So that's the whole point of the, it's important to be able to roll it. And if your fingers touch right here up there, you don't have anywhere to roll it. You should be able to kind of roll it a little bit that way while it's still, the shank is still on your middle finger. And whoops, I have a trouble always making my thumb go out. It wants to hyperextend. So always going like that. And this part, I can't express to you enough. I was so glad that in this tape that they added that, because it's a pencil or a pen we want to hold with the long handle way back here, in between here, in this kind of C right there. And that is not where we hold this. She was right. We have to hold it between this knuckle and this knuckle. And you can have it back like this, or up like this, or in between, somewhere in there. But this is more of a lazy way to do it. And you're not going, when you get on the posteriors, like on the lingual side of the posteriors, you're not going to be able to roll that tip in with this all the way back. There's just no way. So those are some of the things. Your probe. Now the probe, I just had to get through some old instruments in the hope that I had enough instruments, the right instruments to do this today, because I haven't been back to the school. So I have this kind, and it's like your yellow, only mine is steel. And it's marked in 3 millimeter sections. So it's like the point to the first black line is 3 millimeters, and then that black is 3 millimeters. The next section is 3 millimeters and on. So, but what I'm gonna, and we'll get it more into that later, but what I'm gonna say is we use this the same way. We want to, when I go down and up, I'm using my, like in a pocket. I'm fulcruming like on a tooth near, and I'm going like up and down like this. I don't use my fingers to go up.
Do we have a probe or no?
What?
Do we have that tool?
You have a probe, but it doesn't look exactly like this.
Oh, okay.
You have one that has the North Carolina. You have one that has a ton of little lines on it.
Oh, I see it.
Okay, and we'll go over that when we get to the probe, but I just wanted to get a bit of how to grasp this first. All of these are on announcements in Canvas, so you can go over them and over them. I want to, now that we did wrist activation, I really didn't like that one. Let me do the modified. Now let me go back to this one. Oh, that one we did.
Okay, I do have a question just because I know there's a few of us that do not have any dental experience. And we haven't really discussed what instruments are what. Yeah. So like looking at them, I'm like, I think I'm holding the right one.
Sorry.
And I know there's a few other people that are like, what the heck? So I just wanted to ask.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you did. I take that for granted. Okay. So this, can you even see that?
Yeah, with the almost like a 45-degree angle, kind of. Or
Yeah.
55. Yeah.
Well, you have a yellow one.
Yeah.
And then you have a steel one like this with a whole lot of lines on it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to show you in here how to read those lines. This is called a perio probe, and it's marked. They have different kinds of probes. This part of the probe is always the same, you know, how it's a long stick down, but the markings can be different on them, and some offices use some one, some the other. Now your Explorer is this is called an 1112 Explorer, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you can see.
A little bit up. Is that the one that we put the red band on as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Mine has a blue band because I took this out of an old case.
I gotcha.
But, this one, it just kind of looks long and wiry with a point at the end. It's a sharp point. Okay, so yours are nice and thick. See how old this is? Because you can see how thin. That's how we used to work, which ruined everybody's wrists. So your nice big ones are the right shape.
Okay.
So hold on, admit. Okay, so this is your Explorer. So the probes, you should have a yellow one and a steel one, and then this Explorer. On the end of your yellow probe, you should have a shepherd's hook Explorer. Mm-hmm. It's a different kind. It kind of looks like this for those who haven't been in the dental field. It looks like a shepherd's hook. Not that I've been around many shepherds lately, but so it comes to a point. This that I have is an actual instrument. It is not, it's thick and it's to take calculus off. It's a sickle, but it's just the look of your Explorer.
Okay.
Okay, so this kind right here, the shepherd hook, never ever goes subgingival because it's too inflexible. The reason that this one, your ODU 1112, can go is the more bends, you know, that go off this way that an instrument has, it means it can work on posteriors. It's either all posterior or it can work anywhere in the mouth, but definitely on a posterior. if you have something straight like this that goes like this, there's not a lot of bends in that terminal, in that shank. The whole shank is the terminal shank on this one. So if you've just got this shank and then it goes like that, that means it can't curve to get back and posteriors. So this kind with just that comes straight like that and then has your working end is for anteriors, but this particular one is not for, actually it's not even for, well, let me take that back. It's the facial, the buccal, and the occlusal.
Okay.
Not subgingival.
Okay.
It can really wreck the gums. This one, ODU, can go sub, supra, anterior, posterior. Facial, buccal, lingual, doesn't matter. It can go everywhere.
So it's pretty universal.
Very.
In a sense. Okay.
And that's why we like it. They have all sorts of ones, but we don't, I mean, it doesn't do us any good to keep picking up a different instrument. So this one is chosen because it can go anywhere and you don't have to stop and look for another instrument every few seconds.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's really nice. Okay. Does that help?
Yes, a lot.
Okay.
Whenever you hold up your instruments, can you put like a piece of paper behind it? Because it kind of blends in with the sun and I can never see what tip you're actually talking about.
Yeah, I keep trying to put it in front of my t-shirt, but that's not working. Let me try to get. Oh, that doesn't help. I'm so far away.
And which instrument did she say was universal? I was sorry.
The Explorer that has a lot of bends to it with the red band.
Okay, thanks, guys.
The 1112.
And it's called ODU because I remember this in review books, but for boards and stuff. But ODU is for Old Dominion University. That's where it was invented. So it's called the ODU. And the North Carolina probe, which we have, is the one that you have with all those little black lines, is called the North Carolina, or UNC, University of North Carolina, because that's where that was invented. Okay, so, all right, so let's go on with, and do stop me. Stop me when you guys, this is kind of a, I mean, it's doable, but it's kind of, I've never taught instrumentation this way. Okay, so this is going to be, let's put the Explorer down and pick up your probe. Pick up the metal one. This is going to be how that you read them.
Introducing a brand new way to make your mouth happy. Our Happy Mouth Now stores are the perfect place to consume.
I'm going to show you today how to read the UNC probe. So for example, if we insert the probe into the gingiva, this whole area here is at a 1, 1, 1, 1. Even when you still see that black line, it's a 1. So as soon as that black line gets covered, it's a 2, 2, 2, 2. When the black line is covered, it's a 3, 3, 3, 3. And then once this black line is covered, this is the 4 area. Once you reach the bigger black line, it becomes a 5 millimeter pocket. The top of that black line is still at a 5. Once that black line is covered, you have 6, 6, 6. If you still see silver there, it's a 6. Once the black line and the silver is covered, it becomes a 7. 7, 7, 7. Black line is covered at an 8. Now let's say, for example, you're tilting it into the gingival sulcus and you have it at an angle. So it's covering the 2 area and the 3 area. What you want to do is take the measurement from the top. So this would actually be a measurement of a 3 millimeter pocket.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you want me to, anyone want me to redo that?
Sure. Is that the yellow one with the?
I want you to do the metal one with all the lines on it. All the black lines. Well,
It's the one that looks just like the yellow one, but it doesn't have a shepherd's hook at the end.
Okay, I found it.
Okay, let's go again.
Your mouth's journey begins here.
Happy Mouth Now is the #1 choice when it comes to having the mouth you want. Just listen to these celebrities.
I'm going to show you today how to read the UNC probe. So for example, if we insert the probe into the gingiva, this whole area here is at a 1, 1, 1, 1. Even when you still see that black line, it's a 1. So as soon as that black line gets covered, it's a 2, 2, 2, 2. When the black line is covered, it's a 3, 3, 3, 3. And then once this black line is covered, this is the 4 area. Once you reach the bigger black line, it becomes a 5 millimeter pocket. The top of that black line is still at a 5. Once that black line is covered, you have 6, 6, 6, 6. If you still see silver there, it's a 6. Once the black line in the silver is covered, it becomes a 7. 7, 7, 7. Black line is covered at an 8. Now let's say, for example, you're tilting it into the gingival sulcus and you have it at an angle. So it's covering the 2 area and the 3 area. What you want to do is take the measurement from the top. So this would actually be a measurement of a 3 millimeter pocket.
Okay. You want me to run it one more time? I mean, look at it and put your thumbnail up to it. And you can, it's when you put this down in the sulcus. So you are going to slip this down. You are going to put it down inside the little free area. There's a little moat around every tooth. That's the sulcus. And it's supposed to be there. And in order for it to be healthy, it needs to be anywhere from 1 to 3 millimeters. And that's the healthy tooth. But when there's a little bit of destruction of the fibers, it loosens. And so that's when we get a deeper reading. And then if calculus or biofilm is down there and it's not cleaned out again, eventually it'll loosen some more fibers, and then this will go deeper. It doesn't usually go deep like the whole way around. I mean, once in a while we'll get like 6, 6, 6, 6. But most of the time it'll be like 3, 5, 2, okay? So it's gonna be kind of like this. And what we do with the probe is we do a walking. And what I'm gonna fulcrum here, and I'm gonna use this as one unit. Not like this, but like this. I'm gonna fulcrum, and I'm gonna go on a tooth next to it, and I'm going to go down like this, and then curve in the interproximal to get underneath the caul area. Okay, and so when I move my hand this way, it makes it go down, and I move it this way, and it makes it go up. So you can just kind of practice even moving your hand and seeing the distance that it goes on anything. Sometimes I would use like the side of a cup or the top of a water bottle. Pretend like this is a tooth, and you can kind of go up and down like this and kind of get the up and down movement. And you still are going to need to roll this into the interproximal areas and roll it out. But you can kind of get the roll and the movement of doing the whole thing up and down. And when you're probing, you want to stay down in that pocket. Let's say that this the neck of this water bottle was the pocket, and this white is still the enamel. So if I'm going to go down, I go down here and I stay down there. I don't keep, I'm moving it up and down kind of exaggeratively so you can see how it fits on the tooth. But when you're in somebody's mouth, you don't keep coming out and in and out and in. You get underneath the gum, and then you make these like 2 millimeter up and down, or 1 millimeter, so you can do a walking. And you don't just take a measurement here, kind of walk it over here, because right here it could be dipping down and you miss that whole pocket completely. So it's like a walking. I'm just doing it up here so it's against the white. You do it up here and you are just going about 1 millimeter apart, and you'll be seeing that in a minute. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So what she's saying too about the readings on yours that you have, we're going to only do the metal one first. So if you have the plastic one, put it down and get the other one. So you'll put it underneath, and then the gingiva, it's underneath the gingiva, and you measure at the top of the gingival line. So that's when you're looking at, does it go over that next line or under, you know, or where is it on that next line, whether you call it a 2 or a 3 or a 1 or whatever. So let's look at this one.
Hi, I'm Kara, and I love my vagina, but I hate my period. If you get periods, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Every month, you shove a little piece of cotton.
Sorry.
We use the periodontal probe to evaluate the health of the periodontium. Common problems in evaluating the depth of the pocket are inaccurate depths and patient sensitivity. These can be corrected with remembering 3 keys of probing: adaptation, walking stroke, and access. Adaptation is making sure that the working end is parallel to the long axis of the tooth. Remember to keep the last 2 millimeters in contact with the tooth to help with this. So I take a look at the probe here, and commonly, go ahead and turn towards me a little bit, Candy. A lot of times clinicians are flexed too far out like this, or too flat against the tooth like this. Either way, you won't be able to access the sulcus. Making sure that the last 2 millimeters of that probe are tight against the tooth will ensure that you are making sure that that probe is parallel to the long axis of the tooth. Walking strokes are important in order to access the sulcus in its entirety. Oftentimes, we get in the bad habit of doing a slide across the tooth in order to evaluate the depth. The problem with this is that you are actually not able to access each area of the sulcus. So you need to bob 1 to 2 millimeters across in order to get accurate depths. And this is where a lot of clinicians have a hard time as you enter the interproximal space. This is where access comes into play. Too often, clinicians are tilting the probe to perpendicular to the tooth instead of making it just about a 10-degree angle to access that coal. One thing that helps me remember what a 10-degree angle looks like is imagining a clock. Go ahead and turn away. Thank you, Candy. And thinking about 5 after. So if this was noon, I would just want to go 5 after and access that coal. Evaluating the pocket depths on a healthy patient, you know that you are getting it deep enough when the tissue blanches. So here on Candy, she takes really good care of her teeth. So when I insert the probe, keeping the last 2 millimeters tight against the tooth, when I see that sulcus blanch, like so, I'm deep enough. It's a really light grasp. You want to make sure that you're not pushing against that junctional epithelium. You just gently slide in until you feel some resistance, and you will see that blanching, and you'll get a correct probe reading. So I'm going to start here at her get ready zone, come back, see the blanch, 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 10 degrees into the cold blanch, come out, blanch, 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 10 degrees into the coal, come out, blanch, 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 10 degrees in, out, blanching.
I'm going to stop it here because where you go into the sulcus is important. There, we always go in at the distal line angle, and the distal line angle, I don't know if you can see this. Oh, I bet you can't. The distal line angle is kind of where her probe is. It would just be a teeny bit to the left. Have you guys gone over mesial line angles and distal line angles in Professor Franklin's course?
We have a little bit. We've touched on it.
Okay, so what it's doing is that it's where, I don't know if I can explain this. It's like I want to be able to show you. It's where the curvature of the tooth is. Look at the centrals where she has her probe. And you've got in the middle, you've got this kind of flat space. And then it starts to curve. And right where it's in the middle of the curvature is the line angle.
Can you point with your mouse?
Wait, can you see my mouse? Can you see it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. I didn't know that. Okay, so
Yeah.
this would be the flatter part going through here. Then it's going to curve this way, and it's going to curve that way into the distal, and then this side into the mesial. Right in the middle of this curvature, you just kind of have to eyeball it. Right in the middle of it is the line angle. You should be able to put, it's like working with planes. You should be able to put like a piece of paper and it would lay straight going right on top of that. And then put one in on the side. And they would be going like this, and the one on top would be going like this. Where those intersect on the side is the line angle. It's like they're all different planes. Anybody not understand that? Okay.
So wait, are you saying like that's how they would number, like when you go to the dentist, that they go 3 2 3 3 2 2?
Yeah.
That's how so it would start from the distal and then get another number in the middle and then get another number in the mesial area?
No. You start at the distal line angle on teeth, and on the anteriors you can start even in the middle or at the distal line angles where you insert this probe, or you insert your any instrument plus the Explorer. You're gonna, when you first go into a sulcus, you're gonna go at a distal line angle, except you can go, because the distal line angle is the loosest spot, okay? And so that's why they do. Now, one thing that they do is she will go into, you probably didn't catch this, she went into the distal.
Blanch, 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 blanching, blanch, blanch.
She went into this distal line angle right here, and then she walked backwards. So you go from the distal line angle of a tooth all the way backwards. Then you start going forwards. But so any number, the deepest number that you find between this distal line angle and the call is the number that you take. So even if you're going like 2 2 2 4 2 2 2, the deepest number is between here and here would would be this 4, then that's the distal number. It's usually deepest in the call, right underneath the contact point, inside of this on the interproximals. but not always. So we have to not miss that, and we walk it. Then we're just going to walk back because it's easier to be inside. It's less painful to be inside of the mouth than to pull your probe out and go back in. So even though we always start at the distal line angle, on this tooth, we'd start over here and go into the distal. On this tooth, we'd start, probably about right there and go into there. Then we come back, we don't take any reading from here. We're just trying to get from between the distal line angle and the mesial line angle. The deepest spot in between here and here would be direct. That's the middle number. So you've got facial direct and you've got lingual direct. So then and then you just keep going across this way. And then you'd start at the distal line angle and go back here, then repeat. Take the deepest reading between here and here. Go ahead and take the deepest reading between here and here. And then you'd start again. But you'd switch. You don't just keep going this way. You want to go in at the distal line angle. And like I said, if they have sometimes on the interiors, you can go in right at the middle, and you can go here and you always do distal first, distal, and then you come back across and take from here to there. So you still have to get 3, even if you just start in the middle and you go here and then you go from here to here, you still have to take the 3. So you've got to remember that going in here, you're not going to start thinking about the numbers until you get to the distal line angle. Then you're going to take that reading, deepest in there and there. Then you're going to come and take the deepest reading between here and here, and then the deepest between here and here.
So would you record all 3 of those for one tooth?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what you do when you go to a hygienist and they say 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 2, 5, 4. You don't know, you don't have to record, like it's not like a picture where you have to say, well, the 4 millimeter was over here. It wasn't in the
last 2 millimeters.
I keep accidentally poking that. Where you don't have to say, well, it wasn't right in the middle. It doesn't have to be in the middle, just anywhere from this distal line angle to this distal line angle. Anywhere in there, we would record the deepest part, we would record that number. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you get on the anteriors, which are canines to canines, you can do the distal line angle and then go back this way, like I said, or you can go in at the midpoint. Sometimes that's a loose tissue. I mean, more loose than other places, and you can just go in there. But if you do that, you got to remember where you're taking the numbers from. When you get on the posteriors, you go in always at the distal line angle, whether you're on on facial or lingual. You go in on a tooth, like let's pretend this was a molar that should be over here. You're still going to go in at that distal line angle, take the deepest reading into there, then come back, take the deepest reading in between here, and then take the deepest reading in here. Start again on the next molar or premolar, it's just the same thing. Okay, so you can see where she said, and it's super important to put the last 2 millimeters of your instrument always on the tooth surface. And that way, if you put just another millimeter down as your kind of focal point, that tip is going to be poking them right in the tissue every single way around. And that hurts. The gum should be healthy enough to be able to withstand this poking a little bit. We try for it not to hurt, but you can't be so loose that you're so afraid that you're going to hurt your patient that you don't let this go to the bottom of the pocket. So you don't push it down there. you hold your instrument here at the very lightest. Like I will put it in here and then I just kind of almost guide it. I kind of am like holding it and then letting it go, holding it and letting it go so it can just slide down there. It'll just go down there if you hold it light enough. If you have a death grip on that instrument, it's going to hurt because you're pushing up, down, up, down, up, down. You should just let it really lightly go to the bottom and you'll feel that there's resistance. And so you don't have to go hard to feel that way. You just go very softly and do that. So we want this also, it needs to be parallel with the long axis of the tooth. So if the long axis of
It's always tied against the tooth. You'll see my instrument.
So if the long axis of the tooth is like this, then you want this straight like this until you get into the corners. And you can't keep just going straight. A lot of people make that mistake. You should feel like this right here should be in contact with right in between these teeth. And you just kind of slide it and curve it, but it would be curved more this way, down into the, more this way. You have to picture like the roots. The root of this tooth is going to be like this and this, right? So we want this to adapt to the side of the tooth. So over here, you have to kind of go this way, and over here, you have to kind of go that way. Going straight is just stopping it. You're not getting underneath that contact into the caul. And that's where all the disease happens. You know, disease of the mouth, it's the most back in that caul because it's hard to clean underneath the contact points. So that's basically how it is. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let it go.
Instrument move as I keep that in mind, keeping my working end parallel constantly. Blanche.
Oh, that was it. Except parallel constantly, except when you're in the interproximal area.
Pizza or salad? Which one do you think I'm having for dinner tonight? Well, it's not this. It's definitely not this.
Oh, that's ultrasonic. No, not doing it. Not yet. Okay, so this is from, this one I'm going to let you see. I wasn't sure I was going to let you see this because I think they have some bad habits. But a lot of what they're doing is correct. To me, it's not always parallel with the long axis of the tooth. And she shows, but I may show the probe one. Let me do the probe one. The Explorer. I'm not so crazy about.
Using the periodontal probe. The periodontal probe is a slender, tapered, blunt instrument with millimeter markings. It is used to measure probing depth, attachment levels, gingival attachment and recession, furcation, bleeding on probing, and more. The equipment needed for this procedure is as follows: periodontal probe, mouth mirror, and personal protective equipment. Begin with the patient in supine positioning. Grasp. Use a light modified pen grasp to allow you to carefully insert and walk the tip of the instrument along the junctional epithelium with minimal patient discomfort. Fulcrum and fulcrum pressure. Use relatively light fulcrum pressure and flexible fulcrum placement. Intraoral fulcrums are the most stable and are established inside the mouth against a tooth surface. They should be placed near the tooth being probed. Position the probe with the working end parallel to the long axis of the tooth. Position an intraoral cross-arch fulcrum on the same arch, but across from the area being probed, to easily and correctly assess the area to be probed. Establish an intraoral opposite arch fulcrum on the opposite arch from the arch being probed to easily and correctly assess the area to be probed. Fulcrum positions may be raised, lowered, tilted, and/or rotated in response to the surface being measured. Because probing is an assessment function, fulcrum pressure on the tooth or extraorally is light compared with a calculus removal or debridement stroke. Extraoral fulcrums are established outside the mouth and are used predominantly when instrumenting teeth with deep periodontal pockets. Insertion and adaptation. For all periodontal probes, insert the lower 1 to 3 millimeters of the probe adapted against the tooth structure until you locate the junctional epithelium. Insert it parallel to the long axis of the tooth to prevent injury and penetration of the junctional epithelium. When the probe reaches the contact area, slant the tip to the area directly under the contact into the caul area and, with the shank touching the contact, record the measurement. Use the number 2 neighbor's furcation probe to detect furcation areas. Because the furcation is a tooth surface concavity, the curved furcation probe is ideal for identifying mesial and distal furcations of maxillary molars. Using radiographs, previously recorded probe depths, and knowledge of root anatomy as a guide, wrap and insert the furcation probe into the furcation. Note the extent of penetration and classification of involvement. If the patient has a dental implant, a plastic periodontal probe is indicated. Insert the plastic probe adapted to the implant surface until you meet resistance with very light pressure. Activation and direction of stroke. Move the probe in small increments along the base of the sulcus or pocket. Under gentle pressure, the junctional epithelium feels soft and resilient. Move distally in small increments until you reach the center or caul area under the contact of the tooth. One side of the probe must be touching the tooth surface. Lift the probe and reinsert it at the distal line angle. Walk forward until you reach the mesial caul area. Straighten the probe until the upper portion touches the contact area. Continue throughout mouth buccally and lingually. Recording probe readings. Stop to document in the periodontal assessment section of the patient record after several surfaces are complete. Record the deepest readings from distal, buccal, or lingual and mesial surfaces, as this offers the most accurate picture of the periodontal status. Record 6 readings per tooth. The deepest readings offer the most accurate picture of periodontal status and guide the dentist in formulating the dental diagnosis and care plan.
Hey, Macy's trying to get back into the group.
Okay. I just let somebody in. If she's not showing to be let in, does she, did she go back in to like kind of start over? Waiting in the lobby.
I'll ask.
Yeah, she says she's waiting in the lobby, but it doesn't. Oh, here we go. Now I can. Okay. Okay, the one thing about this Explorer, she says other things that I like, so I'm going to allow you to watch it, but when she goes back on the lingual of the posteriors, I think she has her whole hand down too far. I'll stop it when it gets there and let you see what I'm talking about.
Using the Periodontal Explorer. The Explorer, designed for clinical adaptation around the tooth, is used to detect and assess calculus, caries, irregularity, and more. The Explorer consists of a very fine wire-like tip with a sharp point that comes in a variety of lengths, diameters, and bends. Shank diameter is narrow for increased tactile sensitivity. The differences in curvature of the shank, length, and diameter make different explorers useful for specific purposes dependent on tissue, calculus, probing depth, tooth alignment, and other patient-specific characteristics. For this demonstration, the ODU 1112 Explorer is used. The equipment needed for this procedure is as follows: periodontal explorer, mouth mirror, air-water syringe, and personal protective equipment. Begin with the patient in supine positioning. Select the correct working end. To select the correct working end of the 1112 Extended Explorer, it is important to know that it is paired with two working ends. The ODU 1112 is a curved explorer. Use the end with the curvature that adapts toward the surface to be explored, which also adapts the tip and minimizes tissue discomfort to the patient. Grasp. Grasp the explorer using a light to moderate modified pen grasp, which enhances tactile sensitivity and allows you to feel slight vibrations conducted through the shank and handle with the pads of the tripod of fingers. It also increases your ability to maneuver the instrument around the tooth. Fulcrum and fulcrum pressure. Use relatively light fulcrum pressure and flexible fulcrum placement, which allows extended movement and good adaptation to the base of deep periodontal pockets. Intraoral fulcrums are positioned near the tooth being explored, allowing for movement of the explorer in a variety of directions, including vertical, horizontal, and oblique. Fulcrum positions can be raised, lowered, tilted, and/or rotated as needed in response to changing tooth surface topography. Because exploring is an assessment function, fulcrum pressure on the tooth or extraorally is light compared with a calculus removal or debridement stroke. Position a cross-arch fulcrum on the same arch, but across from the area being scaled. Establish an opposite arch fulcrum on the opposite arch from the arch being scaled. Extraoral fulcrums are positioned outside the mouth. Insertion and adaptation. Insert the explorer with the lower 1 to 3 millimeters adapted or curved toward the tooth structure until you locate the junctional epithelium. Tactile evaluation of irregularities on root surface and subgingival calculus exploration begins with explorer insertion. To reduce the possibility of soft tissue injury, maintain adaptation of the explorer tip to the root surface.
Okay, this is what, see how this instrument is almost laying down? This is the terminal shank. And I don't know if they did this just for the pictures, because actually when they're in the mouth a lot in this video, this is what came with Elsevier, the book publishing for these courses. And it's, first of all, it is not parallel with the long axis of the tooth. And in a lot of their shots, all we see is this part. We can't see what they're doing in here, with the exception of this. So if it were me, I'd be picking this hand up, and that instrument would be going in more like this, with this like this way, parallel with the long axis of the tooth. So that's just the part that I'm not crazy about, but I'll let it go on.
For anterior teeth, use the opposite end of the 1112 to explore the surface sides away from yourself. The curvature of the instrument more easily adapts to the root surface. Activation, direction of stroke, and pressure. Begin activation with a vertical insertion stroke. Stroke activation is both a push and a pull stroke. Push, or downward action, helps identify roughness that may be detectable only from the upper edge of a calculus deposit. Assess the root surfaces in multiple directions, including vertical, horizontal, and oblique. Burnished calculus is usually smoothest at the base and may not easily be detected from the bottom. Use long sweeping strokes initially to determine surface irregularities and evaluate root smoothness. Use short strokes around pieces of calculus or surface irregularities.
or sub?
The clinician may also use compressed air to detect supragingival calculus.
Okay, the air is like super important. We're not going to get into that majorly right now, but the air is super important in detecting calculus, because when you put a soft stream of air over the teeth, don't blast it, but you put a soft stream and dry those teeth off, calculus turns a different color. See, it's kind of a chalkiness to the calculus. So when we're checking students and they'll say, oh, I'm ready, come check me. And we'll go and we find calculus. We're like, you didn't use your mirror, did you? Because it's so plainly right there. And as soon as we dry that off on the linguals down here or anywhere else, you see this kind of white chalkiness, and that is calculus. So especially when it's supra, down by the gum line, and just going maybe a teeny bit underneath the gum to a lot underneath the gum, you can see kind of the edge. And on the actual full surface of the tooth, the supra part, sometimes, and especially, I don't know what it is about, I don't know, like 8 to like 14-year-olds or whatever, but a lot of them come in and they have this super thin sheet of calculus, and it's just so thin that when you take an instrument off, it kind of comes off in dots, but it's covering that whole tooth. And I think it's the most tedious kind of calculus to get off, because it's not like it's sometimes big pieces of calculus wind up to be the easiest, because you can easily find it. You can easily lock onto it and pull it off. But these little pieces of it's very tedious going over the whole tooth with little tiny strokes and trying to get every little thing. So your air, if people would use because when it's wet with saliva, it looks the same color as the tooth. Really doesn't look like anything. When you get long strokes over the supra area of the teeth, you can feel, and hold it real light, you can feel that there's kind of this little grainy, just a little grainy across there. And then if you take your air, you can see it. I mean, it's real dull. And as soon as saliva hits it, it shines right up. So, and it's very difficult to see the difference of color unless you've got a major piece of calculus there. So I want you to keep looking at those parts. I want to go over, I thought I chose one that shows you the right and wrong way for your Explorer. I mean, if you could practice with these two instruments, that would be great. And I just don't know if you're going to be able to see. Let me get up like this. So first, the way I find an instrument, and it just goes for any instrument, if I want to know how it works in the mouth, I always look for the terminal shank. So when I see the terminal shank, and the terminal shank should be parallel with the long axis of the tooth, then I automatically know it doesn't go like that, right? Can you see this at all? So I know that it doesn't go like this. It's supposed to, that terminal shank should go like this. So I just picked two teeth and I'm like, which way does this work better? Let's see how that terminal shank, it goes right in there and it's parallel with the long axis of the tooth. And this is pointing toward the front of the mouth. If you get an instrument, because you can make this parallel, the other side, but your instrument's pointing toward their back of their throat. So when you're in a real mouth with a face and lips and everything around it, you can't hold it that way. You've got to come in kind of from the front. So that way you'll know kind of which side. So then where do you go this way? So you can see if you put this on the facial part of this, one of the molars, and you put this terminal shank right down the middle so it's perpendicular, it can go this way and it kind of wraps around. Now try the other side. In order to make that go, you've got to have the instrument kind of back up in their throat. Okay, so you know that this is the right side. Plus, if you just didn't pay attention to the terminal shank and you just put this like this, see how that tip is going outward to the gum? So that's going to go poke, 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 poke. What?
Yeah, will you move up just a little bit? Thank you.
I don't know if I can stay this way. My arms are. Okay. All right. I can't stay steady. Let me try to find something and prop it.
Where you were at was fine. It was just it was out of the screen.
Okay.
So a little bit up.
Is that the blue tool with the blue band?
What?
Is that the blue band?
No, this is, don't pay attention to this band. This is an old instrument. This
You're
is
using
your
the Explorer, right?
ODU 1112 Explorer.
Okay.
We're only working with 2 instruments today, and that's your probe and your ODU Explorer. So, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so this side, when I'm trying to decide what side to use, I'll just pick a tooth like this or whatever, and I put this parallel, the terminal shank, parallel with the long axis of the tooth. You can put it in here, long axis, and then just kind of move it so that it's on the side of the instrument. Okay, so if I'm going to go around like this, I'm going to keep the bottom of the Explorer.
Can you hold it up just a little bit higher?
Whoops, sorry. The bottom of the, bottom of the Explorer parallel. As I go while I'm walking, this terminal shank is always parallel. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, I'm going to go in at the distal line angle, and I'm going to just come forward all the way to here and underneath the caul. Then you can just turn this like we would actually start at the distal line angle here and then go this way. So if I use the other end, if I made that flat against the terminal shank, that piece is sticking out. I don't know if you can see that. The tip. Okay. The tip, that's the wrong. But if I went this way, let's see, this needs to come like this. The thing with the posteriors is you can flip like this with one instrument. You just have to really adapt it so that it's not going into the tissue. But when you are on the anteriors, this is going to, I'm behind the anteriors, and you're going to find the right end. Let me find it. Sometimes it takes a little for even us. Okay, so I can go in at the middle, and I'm going to go just that direction, like the distals, going away, it's going to the left, and I do the middle to the distals, canine to canine. Then you go the middle to the mesials. And when you're actually sitting in front of a patient, and you do the same to the linguals, which you can't really see, but I would be going, I can't do it that way, but I would be on the linguals going every way, this way, and then from the middle line of the tooth to that way. And you do that maxillary and mandibular. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
More time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you take your instrument, let me try to put it down like this. Let's say even on your thumbnail, and you're trying to find out, like, first you got to find the terminal shank and pretend like your thumbnail is a tooth, and you're going to put that parallel to the tooth. I mean, just kind of like, it's hard to do because I can't see what I'm doing. Okay, this. And you can see how that the curvature stays on the tooth. If you do it, just turn it around to 180 where the point is pointing the opposite direction. Put that, try to put that terminal shank. First of all, I can't even get it down here. I'd have to put it up here because this curve is bothering. And then you start to go this way. You can see how that the end of the tip just kind of sticks up. This is something I could show in 2 seconds if you had it in your mouth. So let's say that I'm going to do these. So which way do I go? And on them, I'm going to start with this canine and come this way. I'll do everything this way and then come back and do everything on that side. And when you have someone in the chair, like I'm right now, these would be going away from me. And then you have those that are coming toward me. So I can't see way over there. That's the problem. So I would be going like this. And once again, I'm moving like this. I'm not moving my fingers up and down. I'm moving it in here. You guys can't see this.
So do we always want to turn into the mesial side of the tooth with those?
Yes. Always
Okay.
the mesial and the distal. You've got to, with the probe and your instruments and the Explorer, you've got to get underneath the caul. That is the hot spot. That's the hotbed where the disease first starts in most mouths, is right in that caul. And that's right. It's a hard place to clean, but it's like you have two teeth that are together. Here's their contact, and here's the tissue coming up. And it's like you have to get right between underneath the contact and down by the base of the pocket. You're going underneath it. So you have to kind of scoot it into the tooth and back out while you're doing all that. It's not bad.
I think it's just the amount of practice, like just trying to get the hang of it. So would you go one way, get into the mesial, and then turn back around so you get to the distal as well? Or how would that work?
Not on the anteriors. On the anteriors, you're going to go all one way. You're going to go distals, 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 and then turn to the other side for your instrument. Like you have to turn over and go mesials, mesials, mesials. Well, see, it doesn't really work that way. That's why we say toward you and away from you, because as soon as you hit that midpoint, like if you're on this side,
it kind of shifts, and that's whenever you would ask them to kind of turn towards you so you can get a better angle.
Yeah, if I'm going to all mesial, 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 as soon as I hit the midpoint, now these are the mesials. So you go toward you, like away from you, or toward you. And you've got to remember you're going to be sitting either behind the patient or you're going to be sitting to the side of the patient where there will be a away from you and a toward you view.
I gotcha.
Okay. And one thing I did was, and I don't know how we're going to view this. One thing I did is I sent you, I wonder if I can get into it. hold on here. Let me go. I think so. This is how I set up my mandibular at home because it's hard to work. At school, we have little things that attach onto your chair and this typodont. And so you will be able, oh good, I can do this. Okay. You'll be able to, it won't move on you and you can really use it. But it moves, oh, this said mandibular, but it's maxillary. Okay, so this is how I set it up at home. So I'll get that top part and put it on a big book and put a bottom book up there like this, and then you can start, because you don't have a mirror at this point, but I think it's easier to do like those, you'll see where they're fulcruming. You keep that fulcrum and she's going to just move the ring finger. Every other finger is going to stay right where it is on the instrument. But the ring finger is going to just scoot from tooth to tooth to tooth, and while she's doing that all the way around. Does that make sense? And I think this is a way that you can use your typodont. And remember, you're going to be holding it really light, so your typodont shouldn't move too much. If it does, bring your hand around the top of it and just kind of hold it there while you're on those. And don't worry about really, the only thing I would be doing right now is just simply practicing all your, like moving it in one as one. Like if everything was super glued, right, like that, and you couldn't move any fingers or anything on this hand. Your ring finger is always going to be longer. And to make your ring finger longer, you have to bring these fingers up. Okay? So they have to be holding it kind of like, you can still hold it far down, but they still have to have a knuckle kind of showing outwardly so that your ring finger can be longer. And it can hold the fulcrum there. So you're not going to be laying down like this. You're going to have your hand up like this so that the terminal shank can be parallel with the tooth, whether it is in the mesial or distal or whether it's flat. And what you're feeling is not this whole long part. You're going to be feeling with just the last couple millimeters of the side of that tip. We don't want the tip on, this would be the tip on just full force, like this. We don't want that. We want the side of the tip. And I think that's enough really to have you practice with. If you are going to use your probe on there, I would do this the same way. You can just start practicing, you know, kind of having a fulcrum on the tooth and kind of going up and down and try to get little readings off of those. Like, you know, if you're on your typodont. Now, your typodonts, this is my typodont from the 70s. Can you believe I still had it? Ours is different. Yours has a lot of calculus underneath it. Don't pick that calculus off because you're going to want to scale it off later. So try to go over the calculus and just be feeling the depth of the pocket. Now, unfortunately, the great thing about your typodonts is that it has calculus. It's awesome. The frustrating thing is that some of those pockets are really low. It goes, there's like this whitish, yellowish thing down there underneath that's supposed to be bone. And so you just want to go to the bone part, not all the way down, you know, here. You just want it to go as if it's the bottom of the pocket. The other thing is that it can, boy, if you're going sub slip it underneath that gum on there and you don't have that point on the tooth, you're going to know it because it sticks in that rubber piece and you got to keep pulling it out. So what you can do right now is just mainly practice supra gingivally, and then it won't frustrate you so much going down. But when you do the probe, I want you to kind of go underneath, and you have to kind of push it down on your typodonts. You'll never be pushing like that on a real person. You don't need to for one thing. The real mouth is so much softer and it just goes in. But you're going to have to push kind of hard when you go there. Just remember that you have to angle. You can't just go straight. Okay. You can't just keep going straight from the distal like this. So you're going to go in at the distal line angle. You're going to take the deepest reading. But when you get in the sides, you have to pretend like you're going down these roots. They're not quite so flary on the, so you're going to be going that way, and then you straighten it up and you go in like this, and then you go in that way. You want to kind of curve it underneath. You're trying to get to the middle. Whoops, wait a minute. What you're trying to do is see these, I can't get my head over there. Okay, the middle right there in between two teeth, right underneath there on each side, that contact is a little deep spot. So you have to kind of curve underneath the contact in order to get to that call. And so it's basically, well, that's what I want to show you. It's basically like you're going this way and then straightening it out, and then this way, and then this way, and then into the call that way, and then into call there, straighten out, whoops, into the call there, into the call there, straighten out, into the call there. So you're kind of going how the root structure is going, and a lot faster, shorter, I should say, on the anteriors. And now I'll show you how I set mine up from home on the mandibular. I just labeled these opposite. I was trying to hurry and do this about 5 minutes before we got on. Okay, so this, I just set that up on my Wilkins book because it's nice and thick. And then if you have to hold it, then you can hold it. And then I just fulcrum and practice that way. Does that make sense? Anybody having a hard time doing that? No. Okay. So I think that you can, what I want you to do is just be practicing it like that. And then I swear I thought I had one of them that really showed you more about the right way and the wrong way to have your instrument on that Explorer. If I find it back, I just must have not put it on. I put so many on, I just must have forgot that one. I will put one on here. I think the one that I saw gave a really good explanation close so you can see about the right adaptation of the Explorer on a tooth, kind of in which side to use. So it really, a lot of people have a problem with this Explorer because of that. They're not sure ever which side that they're supposed to use. So if you can see even in this picture how my hand is really up, you know, it's not laying down, it's up. and I'm coming back around the side of a tooth. And my fingers are a little double jointed, not hugely double, but just a little bit. I can't rest the pad of my ring finger on a fulcrum. It kind of bends a little bit, and I can't help it. So I have to kind of look at it that way. So you'll be having some issues. Some of you may be really double jointed and may have an issue trying to keep your hand up. We'll have to work with you because it can be done. You just have to make some moderations to it. But now, let me go over this.
This is chapter 20, the biggest part of chapter 20.
Yes.
With
I'm
just
sorry.
going to have
I
a
was
review
listening to
on the
my-
mirror, and then we'll go on.
Oh, I thought it was the one. Let me get the one that's not recorded. Because we don't have to, we've gone over some of this. We don't have to go over everything. Let me go. Okay, that's the first part with the air and the mirror. So these are the things you can kind of read through this. These are the things that it was already talking about and why we use our explorers. This would be the description. So you need to know the parts of the explorer so that when we say, hold this, hold that, you know what we're talking about. So the working end of an explorer, the tip is a sharp point. It's metal. If you cut it, you know, just cut it in half, that working tip, it would be circular. It's for the shank. The curvature should be in the interproximal areas, or the IP area should be parallel with a long axis of the tooth. Should be flexible. So flexibility means that if you're going to hold it lightly, you have a tactile sense. You can feel calculus and roughness through your fingers. I mean, through the instrument to your fingers. Should be lightweight and large diameter like you guys have. And they have single-ended or double-ended explorers. So these are the types of explorers. Those of you in an office, those skinny ones are old type explorers because they're so thin. But some offices still have some of those, as well as the thicker diameters. So when they talk about a pigtail, I don't think that's particularly a great view of a pigtail. It's because it's kind of like a curly Q, and that doesn't show it. It kind of curls around like the tail of a pig. Not quite that exaggerated, but it's like if you look at it, you just automatically in person, you would automatically see why they call it a pigtail. So B is what they call a cow horn. It's just a bigger, looks like a shepherd's hook, only it's curved. It has a bend to it, an extra bend. And then the C, the ODU, which is what we have, and TU17, that's for really anterior teeth. We used to have those in your kits, and there just wasn't, there's no point to have that anterior instrument when your ODU 1112 can do everything. You don't have to pick it up. And then you have your shepherd's hook. What this shepherd's hook is for is, like I said, you know, not going subgingivally, but it's going, it's on the facial and the lingual. You'll go in the buccal pit area of molars, and all along the occlusal side. Dentists a lot of times use this to detect decay because it's a little more sturdy than the 1112 ODU, which we use, and they can kind of poke around and on the occlusal, and it never goes sub. So your instruments, even though they're a sharp, your explorers, even though they're a sharp point, they can get dull. And when they are dull, it takes a long time for them to get dull because we're not really putting them in places that we suspect of decay anymore like they used to do. So it takes a while for them to get dull, but when they do get dull, you lose your tactile sense. And so you need to, for sure, keep those sharp. Explorers for deep pockets and inside furcations are usually curved. Always keep the side of the explorer tip in contact with the tooth and do not remove it from the pocket for each stroke to avoid tissue trauma. Light touch as this instrument is moved over the surface of the tooth. So then you have that shepherd's hook, which is called a 23. It's for pits and fissures and supragingival smooth surfaces, restoration margins, and sealants, to check a sealant margins. So we can use that instrument and not dull our ODU 1112 on occlusal margins to see if they pulled away or if they need redone or whatever. So the pigtail and the cow horn are for interproximal or proximal, same thing. ODU 1112 is for interproximal and subgingival, but I should have put it's really for everything. You can feel supra. But I think what they're trying to say is that if it's on boards or something and it's like which instrument would be best for supra, and they had the 1112 ODU and the shepherd's hook, I would choose the shepherd's hook. They're wanting to know that you know that that is all for supra gingival. And if it's set interproximal and sub, I would say the 1112 ODU, even though we can use the 1112 ODU on the supra as well. So this was for anteriors also. I'm not going to spend time on this because you don't even have it, but that was for anteriors also. It's kind of wicked looking instrument. So you want lightweight, light touch is utmost important. Always use short controlled walking strokes underneath the tissues, underneath the gums. So tactile sensations on normal tooth surfaces should be smooth. If it's rough, you can feel calculus bumps, you can feel restored surfaces, etc. You can feel depressions and grooves. Sometimes you feel grooves where other hygienists, you can tell that somewhere they got their teeth cleaned that really went to work on an instrument because you feel a groove subgingivally that shouldn't be there. And so you can feel a lot of things with that Explorer if you use it lightly. So carious lesions, abrasion, erosion, pits, deficient restorations, rough margins, etc. Calculus. So there's a tactile, the different types of stimuli. You're going to have a tactile sense when they pass through the instrument to your fingers, and calculus or rough surface and they're smooth. And there's an auditory stimuli. And it means that a sound can be created. You want a clean, smooth enamel and root or quiet. And sometimes rough cementum is scratchy, and sometimes a piece of calculus can be noisy. In that it'll cause your Explorer to go ping, kind of like that, real lightly. And it actually, when you go to find a patient for your boards, they will tell you choose a patient where you can feel a bump, not just feel roughness. It has to be calculus. It can't be too hard of a patient, and it can't be too easy of a patient. They just want to know you can take off calculus. So you have to have a piece of calculus that's there that you can really feel it kind of ping over the Explorer, pings over it subgingivally. So you can always, dried calculus is chalky white or brownish yellow. Air dried is supercalculus to help use the explorer and scalars. Facial lingual surfaces, side of the point is always on the tooth surface, short walking strokes, but really easy over, very light and easy over demineralized surfaces. Proximal surfaces or interproximal surfaces, you lead with the tip into the proximal surface, rolling the handle between the fingers so that the tip doesn't go into the tissue. Explore under the contact and you overlap your strokes. So subgingival procedures, light pressure with your finger rest also. You don't want to go bear down really hard on your fulcrum finger. It'll just tire your hand out and you won't be able to feel as much. Side of the tip should be in contact with the tooth, movement to the base of the pocket, controlled short walking strokes. You don't back into the area, you always lead with your tip. So in your book, I drew this red line when I was recording this because I want you to see that this is the terminal shank of this particular instrument. And so that is the part that needs to be parallel with the long axis of the tooth. This being the whole, as they're going all the way around it and even into the interproximal, it should stay. But you can do different strokes while you're trying to explore for calculus. You can go vertically up and down, and that would be like this, real close together with the side of that tip. Then you can go diagonal, where they're just kind of going diagonal. So this isn't so parallel with the long axis of the tooth, but you may just be trying to see if you're feeling something, you're not sure what, and you would straighten it up as you're going on into the interproximal areas, or you're going to probably gouge them. So distribution, supragingival is usually localized, and it's usually because you will find a patient with we call it a bridge of calculus because they have it. It's just like someone was chewing gum and then put the middle of it on the top of their teeth and just molded it over the front and back of their lower anteriors, because it's that thick, and that's really fun to take off, but it's usually very thick. So you usually don't see a person where that kind of calculus is on every single tooth, covers every tooth in the whole head. So that's why they're saying that supragingival calculus is generally localized. And so on the mandibular linguals and facial surfaces of the maxillary first and second molars. So that's good to know. Test questions and board questions alike. So they'll phrase it like, where are you most apt to find in any mouth? The worst area for that mouth will always be what two areas, usually first. And the first spot is usually down here, because you have all those salivary glands down there. Wharton's duct is there, and all those caruncles of salivary glands are down there, and they're making they're bathing those teeth with calculus, just bathing them. And so if you're not taking those off, brushing properly back there, it's going to solidify harden into calculus. That's usually the worst place on anybody's mouth. The next worst place where you're likely to have the most calculus would be on the facial side of your second molar on the distals. The distal buccal side of that the second molar is usually the worst. The first molar is usually the second worst. And a lot of times will be from the mid of the molar on into the caul area. And the reason is because you have that Stinson's duct is right there on each side, and it's right across from that second molar, and it's just piling saliva there. So here and there will be the worst. If someone has really bad calculus, it'll be worse in those two spots than it is anywhere else. If somebody has really clean mouth, you may still find little bits of calculus on the linguals of the mandibular and the maxillary molar area on the facial. So we talk about calculus in the matter of slight. It has slight, like localized slight calculus on the posteriors or anteriors or full mouth. If it's all over all the mouth, it would be generalized slight because it was everywhere, or moderate or heavy. So subcalculus distribution, it's either generalized or localized. It could be either one. And it's also categorized by slight, moderate, and heavy. And then you can also feel and need to record other irregularities as you feel them on the tooth. So then we always check for mobility. It's you get a 2 single-ended instrument. And what that means is you find 2 instruments that just have a single working edge or single side, and the other side doesn't have anything on it, okay? Then you take one side on the facial of that tooth, one side on the lingual of that tooth, and you try to move it this way, see if it'll move a little bit. And of course, it's not that drastic. You'll just be moving it hopefully about 1 millimeter. We don't take our fingers with gloves on them because for one thing, it just kind of, the glove and everything kind of envelops the whole tooth. And when you try to move it, it's like an illusion. You can't tell. Sometimes you think a tooth is moving and it's not. So that's why they want a blunted an end of an instrument that doesn't have any working end on it. And you can take your gloves away from it and look at it that way and see if it's moving. So it can either move from side to side, or it can move, front to back, or you can put it on the, if this was a tooth, you can put it on like on here and go down and see if it goes down and up. So you want all of those measurements. When it's going one way only and no other way, it's a 1, mobility 1. And if it can go side to side and front to back mobily, it's a 2. So if it does those, and also you press on the occlusal side and press down, and it can kind of depress down and up, it's a 3. So it's easy to, they say all teeth have some degree of movement, but you need to be able to move it more than 1 millimeter, not just a itty bitty. So fremitus, what fremitus is, it's palpable vibration of the teeth. A tooth with fremitus has excess contact. So we need to tell the patient this. I don't notice a lot of people really checking for this unless it's, maybe a dentist, but you need to know what it is. It's only for the maxillary teeth. So what it is you're going to put a finger on them, have them bite down as hard as they can on the back teeth, and you put a finger just over the maxillary. And the reason, you're trying to tell if there's vibration when they have, when they've bitten down and they've occluded or it's closed and all contacting. And so when they've bitten down and you put a finger on since all the maxillary teeth go over the mandibular, you can't check the mandible. You can only check the maxillary teeth. So you want the patient's head upright on the headrest and the occlusal plane parallel with the floor. So you maybe have to lift their head up a little bit so that the occlusal plane right here is parallel with the floor. Okay, then this is saying they want them to click on the back teeth repeatedly while your finger is on the front tooth. And if you feel vibration, then they have fremitus. Here's a picture. And when they're saying excess contact, do you see how a lot of this, like this tooth should be a little more up and just be contacting like between here and here, not all the way to the back. So it's kind of laying on that tooth. So that's what they mean by excess contact. So here's your probes. They have standard and manual and automated probes. It determines a lot of things. Like those tapes said, the pocket depth, it will depend, it measures recession, it measures mucogingival involvement, it measures quite a few things that you'll be learning as we go along. So it's going to absolutely guide your treatment, depending on what their pockets are. It depends on what their pockets are, depend on whether they get a 6-month cleaning or whether they're going to be in for SRP. So sometimes they don't have much calculus at all, but they have deep pockets. They're an SRP patient. It's not only just heavy calculus. You can have a person, although it's rare, but we do have them that don't have deep pockets at all, but they have a whole lot of supra calculus everywhere. And so they would not be an SRP because nothing is wrong with the periodontal, the part that's around the root. That's still healthy, and no, oddly, no fibers have been broken away. So it's going to determine how many months apart their cleanings are, etc. So it's hugely important. You'll be taking a probe reading on everybody, on every appointment, except the appointments, like the person comes in initially, you take a perio reading, determine that they need 4 quads of SRP done at 4 different appointments. So in that case, each time they come back to do an SRP of 1 quad, you don't have to reprobe because we got that initial one. But after they finish the last quad, we let them go home, and in a month, they need to come back before all those colonies build up again. But we want it at least a month for the those fibers hopefully to heal. So we have them go away for a month, and we have them come back and reevaluate it. And at that appointment, we redo the perio pockets so we can see if all those quads of SRP did any good or not, and where to go from there. This is an automated probe. It works on sound waves, and so the echoes are recorded in millimeters. All of us hygienists, when this first came out years ago, we were like so elated. We're like, oh, wow, that'll be so much easier for it to calculate, and the numbers just come up. But what I heard about it, always when anything comes out at first, it's hugely expensive, so the doctors don't want to do it. So, or some of them don't want to do it. So after it was out for a while, and before we really started to try to talk him into it, we had to do some research. So my coworkers, other hygienists, and I did some research on this, and we started getting feedback from other people that were saying it's really pokey, or at least the first ones were. They may have, I'm sure they have made it better by now. But I just want you to know that they do have animated probes now that work off of sound wave echoes. So these are the parts of the probe. You can have, as you see in your set, a plastic or stainless steel. They're always marked in millimeters, and there's 3 parts: a handle, a handled shank, and the working end. They're described as being slender, round, and a smooth, blunted tip. I should have put blunted in here because it's not sharp. It's just a blunted, but it is smooth, rounded, slender tip. And the description for your explorers are going to be slender, wire-like point at the end. It's not blunted, it's a sharp point. So whatever you do, like let's say you have 2 kinds of probes. You have the UNC, the University of North Carolina, with all the markings on it, and you have that yellow probe that are marked in 3 millimeter increments. And so how do you decide between those big wide black bands if it's a 2 or a 3, or I mean if it's a 1 or a 2? So you don't, you have to, that's a situation where you eyeball it. The North Carolina is exact because you've got all those markings. They're just sometimes really hard to read in a real person's mouth that may have food and stuff, and when around their gum tissues, and so you put that in and you can't see the markings because maybe it's bleeding, and the blood comes up, and it's hard to see the markings. So there's pros and cons to every kind. The one that I liked the best, that always used, that most of us hygienists always used, looks exactly like your yellow one in 3 millimeter increments, but it's not plastic, it's metal. And I liked that real well. But those plastic ones, you have to have some kind of a plastic ones with, it doesn't matter the markings that you get, that's just what those come in. The 369, we didn't specifically ask for that, but it came in that you have to have that when you're probing around implants so that you don't scratch implants. The bottom, they're made from titanium, and these instruments can scratch that. And so we have special titanium instruments, which are hugely expensive, or we have plastic instruments, which most offices use to probe around there, and also scale, but we'll get to that later. It adapts to all the surfaces. Oh, that's what I was going to say, use the same probe. So the point is that let's say that you have that patient that comes and you probe their mouth. Well, I don't care if they come back in 1 month from an SRP or if they come back 6-month appointment because they're healthy. The next time you use the same probe, they're supposed to be marked exactly the same, but I think some of the probes, you need a little bit more light pressure to put down there than some of the other probes, and you could get a millimeter or two difference. So when you get used to the kind of probe, if you've used that yellow probe on that patient before, then pick it up and use it again 6 months later, because then you can really compare fairly your numbers. And the markings should be easy to read, which no hygienist feels that markings on a probe are easy to read. I'm just going to tell you. We just have to get used to doing it. But I wrote on here with the recorded one because I want you to see, we have the E and the F, the ones that I've circled E and F in red. This one just being yellow plastic for implants, and it's called a 36912 because it's marked in 36912 millimeters. And then if it's like your gingiva is right in the middle, you have to kind of decipher what, like if I were to take this piece and mark it in thirds, I would mark it about there, and then you can give it a 4 or 5. I mean, you're truly eyeballing it. So you can see how you could get a millimeter or two difference in this. You have to become really, really good at this. But after you get out of private practice, it's not as hard as it might look, and it's usually a lot faster than trying to read all these lines. So anyway, the North Carolina one, the reason that we first chose this one to be in your kits is because this is what credits used on boards. So we didn't want to have you doing another kind of probe if the one they were going to measure your passing by was this kind. Now, Reb, I don't think they do that anymore. I'm not sure, but it's not a bad thing to, if you're going to tell somebody that they need to have in a private practice $1,200 worth of SRP in their mouth, you want to be sure, so that it really was a 5 or a 6 and not just a 3 or a 4. So, but it's marked in markings, just like I said, and you can go over that same YouTube. It's a really good way of explaining how these are read. But it's just that you have if I just always know that 5 is on the top of that black band and 10 is on the top of the next black band. And I think yours only go to 12, not to 15. This may be a 15er millimeter. But at any rate, I don't care what kind of probe that you take. The 5 millimeter mark is right there. There's that 5 because I'm sorry, that shouldn't have 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4, 5. So this one maybe is in, they should all be straight across. This one maybe is marked in 2s. There'll be some that are longer that are marked in 3s. So it matters what you're doing. This one's marked a different way, 1, 2, 3, and the 4 is right. It skips a mark. And so it's right in the middle, and there's the 5. You can see how they're all the same. This is marked 3 and 6, so right on 1 millimeter under a 6 would be a 5. This is marked 3, 3, and 2. So it would be 8 millimeters long there up to here and 6 millimeters right there. So this one you have to just eyeball once again where your 1 and 2 are. So this is good to know, guide to pocket characteristics. A pocket is a diseased sulcus. So we call pockets everything. Like when we're in there, we just call a healthy pocket and a diseased pocket a pocket. But on a test, that's not true. That's not really accurate. A pocket, you call, it's a sulcus, which is just what is down there. It's the sulcus, which is that little free area around a tooth that circles the tooth. And so if the sulcus is diseased, then it's called a pocket. Okay, so a pocket is a diseased sulcus, gingival sulcus. And the depth will vary around the tooth, and you measure from the base of the pocket to the gingival margin, wherever that gingival margin is around the tooth, and it could be at different heights. So the call or contact area significance, need to read at the deepest part of the call. And that's a huge area that people sometimes don't, it takes a while to learn to do that. So we're going to also evaluate tooth surface. You can also feel irregularities, you know, the grooves and bumps and malformations. So this is a 7 millimeter pocket of a diseased tooth A. You can see where the gingival margin is up at that top red line. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's right underneath that, or I mean, right at probably in real life that 7 mark. So that would be a 7 millimeter pocket. But you can see how they have, this is kind of bulbous and it's already gone in the 7 millimeter pocket and it's destroyed this crestal bone. This is a 2 millimeter, really shallow pocket, which is probably what most of you guys have, 2 and 3 millimeters. And so you're going to put it at the base of there. You're going to gently put it upon the base of the sulcus and read up to where that margin is right there. And that's how you do it. So perio disease, you have early, moderate, and advanced. So this would be what you see on a person's mouth and what we see when we pull the lips back. So when they're smiling, you just might see really red papilla right here. And of course, when you open it up, you're going to see even more. So this would be the type that has calculus here and maybe some black stain or maybe even the start of some decay. So this is really red and probably bleeds super easily because it's already taken off some of that crest. This one, this is on the buccal side and the lingual side, that buccal side being more pronounced. And so here you can see to where this has gone down, moderate, it's gotten worse. More of those fibers have detached, which makes the pocket deeper. So they're going to get a deeper reading now. They come back in 3 months, and this is what you see off of that same site. And their calculus is more, and the stain is more, and they've lost more bone. This is maybe more red, or sometimes it's not even red. If it's a smoker, they don't really get that red. It's the heat that, and they don't bleed easily. Smokers don't. So you just may still get this type of it could still be this type of situation. This is advanced periodontitis. You can see here on this side, it is healthy. That bone crest is way up there. And on this side, look how bulbous this is. And it's just torn away even more. And this, this red line that goes diagonal is probably where the gingiva is. Like the gingiva may be nice on this side, and then all of a sudden it takes a nosedive, and you can visualize this part. You can even see this part of the root and the calculus. So you know, you can feel down there with the Explorer and feel up and down this side. You're going to even feel it with your probe. You'll know that because you can feel it that way, and look how much bone it's destroyed. So it's super important to feel this and get it the heck off of there. So here is it slightly bleeding, and it was even before I put these red marks on there, but that would be what I would say would be a slight BOP, bleeding on probe. And that's what we say, was there a lot of BOP? And that means when you were probing, because there's going to be bleeding when you're scaling, but most likely. But on the probe, the gum should be, like I said, healthy enough to be able to take that. So here would be your 4, and here would be your 5 up here. But this is way back. It's like underneath that 1, you can still see the black line. So it's going to be, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. So it would be a 1 millimeter, but it's bleeding on probe. So that tooth has got a problem. So the probing, the caul is where the disease begins. I know that gal called it coal, which sounds better to me as well. But when you get around a lot of dental professionals, it's the caul. That's so you don't embarrass yourself. They call it the caul. So here's a side view of the tooth. And this would be if you just looked at the side. This tooth, where it's shaded, is the contact area where it's going to contact the tooth that's in front of this tooth. So what we need to do, we are going all the way. Here's the papilla, and the papilla is formed by 2 papilla, a papilla on the lingual, a papilla on the facial, and then they form together, and they dip down here underneath this contact area. So where this is yellow right there, that right in between there, that's the caul area, like underneath. You want to be able to scale from there all the way to the bottom of the probe. So if you make a long stroke, you're going to go like this and get caught in the middle of the teeth. You can't go up any further because it's the teeth are contacting there. So it's super important that you're underneath and are making these short strokes with your scaling, and try to get from here to the middle. And when you're on the lingual, you go from there to the middle. So if you get both sides, so when you're doing the buccal side, you're going to put the probe up, and that's why you have to angle it. You can't go straight and get down to the middle of this molar, because another tooth is there. So you have to go as close as you can to the contact. This should be butting up next to the contact, and you try to get in the middle of this area. So just always look, if you look on the, because you can't see under here, but you can see the top of the occlusal side. And then you're going to imagine that this has to go from there to kind of the middle. That'll help you with your angle. So it's a crater formation in this. It's still kind of straight, this bottom of this sulcus where the dotted lines are. Here, it's had diseases down here, and you can see where it's cratered underneath that caul area. And so this is going to read way different measurement than this is going to right up here. So we need accuracy and consistency. There's patient discomfort, and trauma needs to be minimal. Some people even have to have anesthetic before their gums are so diseased. They want an anesthetic before you do the probing. So it's okay. And we have even a topical gum number called Orachix that you'll be doing also, learning all about also that can help with this. So we can determine the severity and extent of their periodontal disease and determine what classification of perio disease they have. So it determines treatment and everything. Grasp, finger rest, you always want to put your finger rest or your fulcrum, same thing, on a non-mobile tooth. So if you put it on a tooth, like you should always be trying to fulcrum on next to the tooth you're working on and not go really far across. So if, as you're moving that, think of my knuckles as being teeth and this as being my fulcrum. And as I'm going like this, then I'm working on this tooth, I go on this tooth and work on this tooth. You try not to put your fulcrum here and work on this tooth over here. You just don't have as much stability or strength in pulling it up. Okay, modified pin grasp at the lingual line angle. You establish a finger rest on a neighboring tooth, preferably in the same arch. If you're on the posteriors, I probably, like one of you said, would use a extraoral fulcrum, which means you're out of the mouth. It's extraoral, not intraoral on the tooth. And so it'll be hard to do that on these typodonts. So just practice on the teeth next to the ones. Practice that way. Hold the side of the instrument tip flat against the tooth near the gingival tissue. Healthy or firm fibrotic tissue is way more hard. That's what I was saying. It's harder to probe. It's so healthy and it's tight against the tooth. So trying to get an explorer down there can make it a little uncomfortable. Unfortunately, if they've got some disease and their gums are flapping in the wind, kind of business, it's obviously going to be super easy to get a probe down there. So the healthier their teeth are, probably the more might be the more sensitive that they are to the probing. If you have spongy soft tissue, gentle on probing, you still are going to be gentle and it's probably going to have a lot more BOP. So one thing we do not do that you need to remember is we never probe primary teeth. Some practices will probe primary teeth, but we are not going to probe primary teeth. There's still, we don't want to put anything down there on primary teeth that is going to do anything with knocking those fibers or anything away from there. We just don't do it. So if you get a person that has you get an 11-year-old that has mixed dentition, some baby teeth, the deciduous teeth, and some permanent teeth, well, you're only going to probe the permanent ones and you just skip the baby ones on the chart. So you assess a periodontal pocket depth by having the long axis of the probe parallel to the tooth. You evaluate the topography, which is the surface, and lift gently over the calculus deposit. You are going to feel the base of the pocket feels soft and elastic, and you're going to position that for reading. So from gingival margin to attached periodontal tissue, when the gingival margin appears at a level between the probe marks, use the higher mark, like she was saying in there. Here is going to be all 5mm pockets using different probes. This would be a color-coded. This is the Michigan probe, which doesn't have any like black on it at all. It's just plain. The Williams probe and the Hugh Freedy probe. So just as examples, this is the walking. You want to just keep walking. Boy, I made a mess of this, didn't I, when I was recording? But here's, I'm showing the line angles of the tooth, the distal from there to the distal. That's where you go in at the distal line angle. You walk to the back, take the deepest reading. You turn it, walk to the front, and don't start taking a reading till you get to this line angle. Then you're going to take the deepest reading between here and this line angle. Then you're going to just go here once. You don't come back. You just go to the other side, the mesial side, and into the call, take that, and it's going to be down here that you are doing that, of course. Now, when you have an explorer and you're down here, you're not just going to go down here. You're going to go here and then overlap up here and then overlap up here the whole way across, because you don't want to only be looking down here and miss calculus up here. So you go only a millimeter or two at a time, up and down, and usually it would be like a touch, touch, touch rhythm from call to call. And you don't do it real long. We usually you will be able at one time, like I can right now, to probe, take 3 readings on the entire mouth, 32 teeth, facial and lingual, in about 6-7 minutes. Okay? When you're learning, you're going to be doing it really a lot slower. But that is going to change, I promise you. So here's another example of the deepest of the line angles of a molar and really any tooth. It is just, it's right where it's kind of in the middle of the curve to the interproximal. Okay, so at the anterior, you can do just a line angle or midline. And into the interproximals, you need to roll that instrument. So here's clinical attachment loss, CAL, clinical attachment loss. These are the things that we're going to take. PD is periodontal depth, or pocket depth. And so that's from the gingival margin to the base, or the base to the gingival margin. We take the reading from the base here up to right where this is, and we mark, and we go 3, 6, looks like a 7. Oh, it is down here, 7. This is recession. This is where we have to measure the pocket, and then we also measure recession at a later point. The gum has, this gum is real high up here where it's supposed to be. This gum is down, okay? It is also at the same depth as that, but this pocket is only a 5 millimeter. What I would take it, maybe, I'm sorry, maybe 3 or 4, sorry. This would be a 3, and that goes right above there a little bit, that would be a 4, and maybe there's another millimeter up to the CEJ. So the cal is, okay, you have this one would read a different number than this one, even though they're at the same height with, or depth. But the attachment loss, this tooth, B, has a lot more attachment loss than A does, if you can see that. This is going to be up there. This gum has receded down to where you can see that. So it's not going to have as much deep as a pocket from here to the top of the gingival margin. But then we also are going to need to measure the recession. So we add the recession onto the pocket, and you'd come up with the same 7 millimeter pocket. So this is the cal. So, this is saying that. So you're going to take, this one is high like that. And what they want you to do is take a measurement to the CEJ, and then from the CEJ to there, and it would be 5 millimeters, because this 2 millimeters is supposed to be there. Remember, that's that moat around. It's just 2 millimeters here. There's nothing wrong with the tooth. But we would take a measurement from the gingival margin to the CEJ, which would be 2 millimeters, and then probably 3 on here by my red marking. But it's supposed to be 2 on there, and the whole from the base here all the way up to here is 7 millimeters. Well, this is supposed to be there. So we take 7 minus that 2, and you've got a 5 millimeter pocket between the CEJ and the base. So this is the clinical attachment loss is going to equal the pocket depth when the gingival margin is at the same level as the CEJ. So this level is the same as the CEJ. So clinical attachment loss is 5 millimeters and pocket depth is 5 millimeters. So I'm going to kind of hurry through these. Just want to give you we'll talk about the neighbor's probe at a different time because you don't have one of those yet. These are furcations. So this is in the crotch of a molar. And this is just a class 1 furcation. This is going to have the bone, the tissue way up here. It's just that when you probe right here, you may get a 5 millimeter right in the middle. And this area from here to here is going to be the shortest. I mean, if this goes 5 millimeters, it's detaching there, and that's not great, but it's not showing anything else. If in the middle of a tooth detaches 5 millimeters, then you're right up in the crotch of this tooth. And you can now try to clean that out and make sure that that's clean out. They don't have anything to do that. So they need to come in on maybe a more regular basis and have their teeth cleaned and all those, with a Cavitron or something, all those bacteria and bugs and everything blasted out of there for them. And so as it gets worse, this bone underneath starts to reabsorb, and degenerate, and then it becomes a deeper. And then it becomes a class 3 where you can, maybe the gingival margin is still up here, and but the base goes all the way down here. You put your probe in and you're all the way down here. And if you angle it almost horizontal, 3, you can go from one side clear to the other. What?
I have a question.
Sure.
On the radiograph, is it that black spot, is that just like showing where the bone is moving downwards?
That the bone, it should be all, yes. It's just a blank radiolucent spot that should have bone there. And it doesn't, so it's showing up as radiolucent instead of radio opaque.
Okay, thank you.
And as the bone is further destroyed, you get bigger, and then you get bigger. So this would be showing that down there. And if this is the gingival margin, they can't see this. It's like, how can you, how do they clean it? It's impossible, but sometimes this gingival margin on a class 4 is way down here. They have so much recession that just you see the gingival margin, and it's just over those bottom root. And if you look down, you can see through that hole from side to side. That would be a 4. So mucogingival, it's gingiva and the mucous membrane with an O connecting the two verbs. So it's mucogingival. And that we do a tension test, which we're going to do. We were going to do this today, actually, in an intraoral exam, so you could know about that. But obviously we can't do that yet, but we'll get to it. Tension test is when you pull the lips kind of out and you look at all the frenum. We want to locate all the frenal attachments and see if they're where they need to be. It doesn't hurt the patient at all. It's just, and you can kind of pull it out in a way. I can show you where you can view the entire mouth at in about 4 seconds. Gingival tissue, where a pocket extends to or through the mucogingival junction. We measure the attached, and that's what the mucogingival is. So let's say that we're going to measure the mucogingival junction is right here. This is the line that separates your attached gingiva, which you can't like pick up with your fingers and move around. It's like stable and attached underneath your teeth. And then you get to a part where it's going to start the cheeks and the lips. And where that line is, it's usually a color line. You can tell a difference in color where that line is. This the mucosal tissue is usually a whole lot redder, and this is like fleshy pink or whatever. So you can tell just by looking. So sometimes people have a deep pocket that goes through that line and into the body, into the tissue and cells. So we want to keep it up here. It still goes in there through the blood flow, but not like it does. We don't want any hole in between this attached part and just and the loose part. That is called the mucogingival junction because it's mucus is joining the gingiva, but the base of the pocket should be above that line, but sometimes their pocket gets so deep that it goes to that line, and then it even goes further. It just keeps degenerating down here like this. So definitely we need to measure that, and they measure it in a way that they don't just take this. What they do is they go on the outside of the pocket. This probe is on the outside of the pocket. They measure this little line here wherever you see, because there's not an actual line. It's where you're going to see, but you can tell the color difference. And when you'll put it at that color difference, and that which would be the mucogingival line, and you measure from there up to the gingival margin. And let's say that's 5 millimeters. Let's say that you go inside and they don't have mucogingival involvement yet, so it doesn't go all the way down here. You put the probe inside, but the pocket only goes to 3 millimeters. That means they've got 2 millimeters left of attachment. So if this gum recedes at all, then they can start having an issue. So these type of people, we need to make sure that, I mean, a 2 millimeter attachment, it's okay. It's actually okay. As long as the patient isn't using really hard toothbrushes and causing a lot of recession. So that's where we can come in and we can offer an advice for different things for them to take home to clean, and soft toothbrush and go really soft on these areas, etc. And you don't want any recession at all. So mucogingival examination. So here's the mucogingival junction, and this is alveolar mucosa, which moves, and cemento enamel junctions. So they're measuring, this person has a lot of recession where that gum tissue should be up here at the CEJ, but it's not. This is what it would look like in a mouth, but I've marked that up. Talk a lot with my hands and my marker, don't I? Okay, so here you can't, obviously, since I said it was a huge difference, it's going to show a picture where it's not a huge difference. But you can kind of tell when you pull this lip out how this creases and it's movable here, and this isn't. That doesn't pull out and have creases in it. That's attached and really firm on there. And then so you look at kind of, and it's irregular line. It'll kind of go like this. And this is much more attached than this, or this is much more attachment there than this is, hoping that these are really shallow pockets. So if you can't just eyeball where that line is, they're like, put a probe up where you think that line mark would be on the color, and then you can take another probe and start probing outside. Take your first measurement there and your second measurement inside, subtract it, and you'll find how much is there. So this is it's called a wrinkle or fold test for a mucogingival defect. And see, you can tell more on this. See where the mucogingival line is? How this is all attached in one color, and this is all has a lot of little veins in it, and it's movable because it's going up to your lip, and it's very movable. This you can't just pick up. This particular tooth has, there's a CEJ, it's already receded a whole lot. And so we're going to put a probe right there where we see the color line, and then we'll do the, like if this tooth has 2 millimeter or a 3 millimeter pocket, it's not going to really matter. But if this person has a 3 millimeter pocket, it may go right through that line from the attached into the soft, if that makes sense. So that's why we call it MGI, mucogingival involvement. Oh, I'm already on there. Okay, so these are two different types of recession. Sometimes the back, the lingual is not receded at all, but it will be receded this way, maybe from floss mishaps or because they have a lot of recession on this particular tooth. But on these other teeth, they don't have recession. But on this one, boy, they do. And on this one, it happens to go below that line. This person has mucogingival involvement by 2 millimeters or so. So your dentist would need to know that and probably do a graft. Try to close this pocket and maybe do a graft. They take tissue from the back of the roof of your mouth, oral surgeon or periodontist, and they can sew it on here and kind of create a new front. Okay, selection of radiographs. Periapicals are needed because they show the complete periodontal tissues when you're suspecting someone of having mucogingival involvement. Bite wings don't show the roots, so they can't help. Vertical bite wings can help a little bit, and usually you can put them on a light box during probing if possible, but now each of your operatories has a light box, but we don't need them anymore since we have the computer. When I'm scaling someone's teeth, I have always got, I half the screen and put their films on one half of that screen and their periodontal readings on the other half of the screen, since I don't have x-ray vision through the tissue. And then you always know when you're scaling and you're trying to explore just if you're going too far or not far enough. So the bone level, the crest is 1 to 1.5 millimeters from the CEJ on film. So on film, just because it's 1 to 1.5 millimeters, that's where it's supposed to be. So you can look at this and say, well, that's not right at the CEJ. They must have bone loss. And no, 1.5 to 2 millimeters. They say 1 to 1.5, but I mean it can be up to 2. I think you'll have to see in your radiography class. I know they go over this, and that's normal. So I wouldn't say these people have bone loss. They have a nice crest, white piece right across that interproximal area. And so that isn't destruction. And so you can see on this radiograph on the right, what I have in blue, where you see that white in between the teeth, that's a nice crest. It has not gone bad yet or deteriorated. This would be horizontal bone loss. Here is the CEJ up at that top on these two teeth on the top of the, and it can be like 1 or 1.5, 2 millimeters lower than that. Look how low this is. And in fact, it's so low that the bone has deteriorated down here and they have a furcation, big furcation. Okay, so horizontal bone loss. This is also horizontal bone loss, but I wanted to show you this for those of you, you see that little bump, that's calculus. And in order for calculus to show up on a film, it's got to be way huge. You can have a big piece of calculus and you look at the radiographs, you can only see them on the interproximal because you can't see it, calculus on the facials or linguals. But on the interproximal, you can see they call them spicules. Sometimes they're really tiny, but when it's kind of that big, I mean, you can have a pretty big spot in their mouth and it won't show up at all. So you know if it shows up, it's pretty big. So you know that it's there. So I look at the radiographs. This is horizontal bone loss also. It looks like usually anything that's diagonal, they call vertical bone loss. But in this particular case, it's because it has to be just this one instance. This molar was removed or never there, the first molar. So this molar is looking for contact and it begins to drift to the mesial. It won't drift all the way down and lay flat. It'll just drift enough that years after you decide on a implant that goes in there. Now this tooth is in the way, which is why we like to tell people to fill these spots. Some teeth don't drift quite this much, but it's still enough that you can't fit a normal looking tooth in here if you had a bridge or something. So we like to fill these spots and have them contact like they're supposed to, so they don't drift this way. But if this was upright, if you turned this tooth upright, it would bring this up to be horizontal. So when a molar is drifted forward like this, in front or in back of a missing tooth, then that's not really considered vertical, it's still horizontal. Does that make sense? This would be vertical because this molar is straight up. And here's the premolar. They're straight up and down, and then you've got this going diagonal. That would be called vertical bone loss, and you can see it here on an x-ray, or angular bone loss. Okay. You can, I just have a few more. Crestal lamina dura is normal. It's white, continuous bone around the roots of the teeth. It lines the socket. A diseased lamina dura is indistinct and radiolucent and really fuzzy. So furcation, a normal furcation bone is between those roots. And if it's diseased, it's going to have a radiolucent area in the furcation on films. So the periodontal ligament space, if it's normal, it's a real fine line around the tooth. If it's diseased, it's very thick near the crest. So you can see on this, the first and second molar, how the bone goes up here. Now it's a furcation in both areas. It's just deeper on that second molar. And you can see the white. That's the bone socket, is the lamina dura. It's the bone socket, or tooth socket. And it should be, and it's destroyed over here on this side. So you can see when teeth are under stress or movement, like braces, and they're moving, or they've got disease or an abscess or something, they're getting a lot of pressure, wrong amounts of pressure on certain teeth. This, on a radiograph, this periodontal ligament will get really thick like that instead of this little thin line over here. That's normal. That's not. This one's around the whole tooth. So the earliest signs of disease are really not evident on film. It's when it gets a little worse that it's evident on film. Only after the inflammation has extended from the gingivitis to the periodontitis. It's from above the tooth, supra, to below the tooth, sub, and hurt all those supporting bone levels. So the initial bone destruction is in interproximal, interdental, same thing, in the crestal lamina dura. So this you need to know. Gingivitis occurs very frequently in children, but it is reversible. So it's not gone below the CEJ yet. It's all supra and above the gums. You can reverse that with proper care, home care, in about 3 weeks, 21 days. Periodontitis, once you get to periodontitis and it goes below the gum, the lamina, I'm sorry, what am I trying to say? Stopping to think what time it was, and I've lost my, the CEJ. If it goes below and it's anything that surrounds the root, then you always have it. You just have maybe a lighter case and a worse case of periodontal disease. So gingivitis you can have as a child and as an adult. Periodontitis you can have as a child and adult. And I stress this because it's on test questions. It may not be on your quiz, but it might be on your midterm or final, and definitely have seen it in review books. So both children and adults can have both gingivitis and perio. So these are just other radiographic findings that you can see. The films do not show soft tissue pockets. That's why we need to probe. So I was going to have you real quick, everybody show me with their typodont how they're holding an Explorer, but looks like we are out of time. So this is what I'm going to do. You can go ahead and we can save the charting. Like if we're back on Wednesday, we can do that. Bring your charting and those the packet and the red and blue pencil if you don't have one. We have some at the school, and we can do that as well as hook your typodonts on the chairs so that you can practice this stuff. So I would go ahead and do a little practicing between now and then if you can, and see if you can follow what this is. I'm also going to find that it may take me a while going through all those videos, but I am going to find the video so that you can see it at least instead of not being able to see my hand here. I'm going to find the video that is showing, I think, better of how to tell the right and wrong side, what side to use of your Explorer. And then I will put it on announcements, but I will email all of you that it's there. Is that good?
I have a question.
Sure.
For the study guide for this week, it is chapters 13, 16, and 20, part 1. Is there going to be a different study guide for part 2 of chapter 20?
Yeah.
Okay. Will we get that this week?
Probably.
Okay.
Look at my so we're on the 3rd week. Yeah. Isn't the study guide already on Canvas?
I only found the 2 other chapters and then 20 part 1. I didn't see part 2 of chapter 20.
Yeah, that won't be till next week. I mean, I can open it up now. It should be on there. I don't know if I opened it up under week 4.
No, it's okay. I was just asking because we went over it today and I didn't know if we needed to know that for this week.
Yeah, no, you need to know that for later. But what you need to know this for is for when you start working on instruments. So it's not really, you've really got to understand the handle and what it's for and what it does and the different things, different parts of it, of these instruments before you do that. And I need to do that with the Explorer as well. But we're just ahead of schedule because of the way that this had to go. But I still think that what I've noticed with you guys is so far is that if we get into a little bit to this and then go over the meat of it, it seems like you guys really catch on a lot faster. Am I wrong? Does anybody not feel that way?
I agree.
Okay, because I just don't want to waste this time. And I thought, this would be, Director Beckerly and I spoke and we're like, this would be, they really haven't had this part yet, but with the probe, you really need to know a little bit about the pockets and the sockets and all that stuff, no matter what instrument you're using. So I felt that this would be appropriate right now, even though you're not going to be tested on it for another week or so, but it will just be review. So I wanted everybody to show me with their, put their cameras on and show me, but we're over time. So what I'm going to do, if you guys will practice that, I'll find that video and put it on for the Explorer, which I think is going to be easier for you to understand. Then bring everything on Wednesday unless we hear that we're going to be home. But at least if we're home again and do this, then you've got the restoration packets. you'll already have them. If not, if we go back to school, just bring the packets and everything, your typodonts and your instruments, bring it all back. And we'll do it in class. Any questions?
So I was looking in the book just because I'm still a little confused on the probing. Would page 155 be a good area, the 10-4 chart?
155.
I know it's still technically chapter 10, but I didn't know if that was a good chart to refer back to.
Yeah, you guys will, when we are in the clinic, you'll be using the, you'll be plotting those numbers on dummy accounts, you know, in the computer, so that you'll have that. We have paper charts, but yes, that would be that second page. I mean, the second picture on 155 would be, a great way to, and how you read that is, if you'll look at the key on the right in the middle of the page, it says pocket depth as PD. So if you look at that chart, and this is mainly for the ones who haven't had any dental experience, if you look at the teeth, 1 through 16 is the buccal, and the is that blue or green, or the green part is the lingual. When you're looking at a chart, the linguals are always in the middle next to each other. So that's the maxillary 1 through 16. When you look at 17 through 32, that's all the facial. The facial or buccals are on to the outside, and the linguals are already to the inside. So if you look at just the PD numbers of like 2, looks like they have 1 blacked out. It's probably going to get extracted. 2, you can see 736. Those, that's from the distal, and then the direct, and then the mesial of number 2 tooth. And that's how you plot those.
Okay.
And when you see the little red dots, we can add bleeding under the bleeding line right underneath it on the computer. If we see that hairline bleed, we just add red dots wherever it was bleeding.
Okay, that makes sense.
That should be enough for you guys till Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye. If anyone's having an issue with this, email me.